So the idea is to kind of like look at what are the different formats that digital media has shaped contemporary artistic production. That is in a bigger kind of scheme. Digital media also, we tend to think of technology in terms of like, where are we today in our life, right? Where is humanity today with the way that technology has transformed our everyday life, right? So that would be for us more the kind of curatorial framework that we were looking at, how technology and media come together with art. So one of the things that strikes me today is if you were born in, let's say, the 1600s, you could more or less imagine how your grandchildren would live their life. There would be some change, right? It wouldn't be exactly the same, but the change wouldn't be so radical. And what characterizes our world today is that you don't know what your life will look like in 5 years, right? Because technology has the capacity to change so rapidly and to change our life in such radical ways that it almost begs new kinds of creativity and imagination. I was recently at this exhibition about alternative transportation, and the city of New York, where I come from, is suddenly looking like a completely different city because cars are no longer going to be the main occupants of the street. They're going to be self-driving cars that need different kind of infrastructure because you need to have sensors, because you need to have traffic lights in different ways. And also because today, electronic bikes are made in a major way of transportation, right? So it's going to change not only how I get from place A to place B, but it's also going to change how I live my life. And it's also going to change my everyday reality, my infrastructure, my city is going to change as a result. So I think for me, this is the core of what this exhibition is about. Right? Imagining the immediate future and kind of questioning what are, because in any future, there are always multiple paths, and you kind of like, where are we going with this? Are we going this way, this way, this way? I mean, Işın and I work very organically together, and each one of us brings an aspect. So Harari is Işın's inspiration for this particular aspect of the exhibition. Because, you know, again, there's that speculation, which we both share, of the relationship between humans and non-humans. And when we mean by non-humans, it has a few aspects to it, right? There is the machine, there's the artificial intelligence, but there's also the non-human in terms of the critter and the microbes and the other aspects of life that we could in the past not see in a naked eye. Right? You could not see a microbe before you had a microscope. So the way that our natural world has been amplified through technology and the way that technology has distanced ourselves at the same time from the natural world go hand in hand. And it is that complexity that the exhibition explores. I think that I think we're living in a global world today with all its complexity. The art world is especially global. That I think it's a natural process. I as a curator, look at work from anywhere, and I think that's also what brings us together today as humanity, right? Because we are sharing similar concerns. We're not going to say, if you're living in China, therefore this is not affecting you. Because, I mean, we see how trade is interconnected, how economies are interconnected. We see how the flow of people and migration, when there is a war in Syria, people are coming to Turkey, people are going into Europe. I mean, those, the flows of humanity today are global in scale. So the art world is an integral part of our world, and the production of art is engaging those kind of issues. Well, I think actually, to me, and I don't mean to kind of change this, but to me, actually, the most interesting question about artificial intelligence in this exhibition is actually the work of Lawrence Leck.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because Lex's work is the one, it's like a hall of mirrors, and there's a layer upon layer upon layer. It's like an onion that you try and peel of realities that are man-made and yet referencing a reality that we are familiar with, to question that relationship between the reality of the screen and the reality outside of the screen as being integrated in one and the same, and questioning the way that, you know, a time that is not in a distant future where the machine is actually dictating our everyday life. And one of the points I think about Lex's work that really resonates with me is that there are no humans in the work. The only person in the work is you as a viewer engaging the piece. And there's something alarming and discomforting to me when I watch that work because of that feeling of vacantness, that we have been scooped out and out of the landscape, and it is taken over by that machine that creates this reality, and that the artificial intelligence is what's creating the world that we're looking at. And I think that in that way, this is where Anadol and Lex's work connect and overlap, because Anadol is looking at real buildings, or at least references real buildings in the same way that Lex does, but Lex is transforming them into a video game language, while Anadol is distorting. He's not changing them, he's not creating them anew, but he's playing with that relationship between the man-made algorithm that picks those images, right, and takes them and distorts them, and what we see. So that kind of, it's playing with our brain of what is it that we are seeing, what is it that is available to us to see, and also the kind of indexicality between the image and our reaction to it. So if you think about yourself as a child, and maybe there's a picture that your parents took when you were 5 years old, and you might associate a memory with that picture. But if that picture didn't exist, would you still remember the event? That sometimes our memory is so dictated by the images, by the traces that are left behind, than what we would actually remember. And that's a question, right? So it's a question about our past, right, in terms of what is it that constitutes who we are in relationship to the past. But it's also, how do we understand the world around us in the present? Because there is a machine that is saying, you're going to see this, 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 and this image, but you're not going to see other things. And in some ways it's random, right, what the machine picked. But at the same time, it's not random, because somebody sat there and programmed it, right, and saying, okay, I'm going to pick image 150 and 20, right? And even though it's random, somebody made that choice. So that relationship between our own agency and what is it that we're receiving in terms of the images that constitute our memory is very slippery. Yeah, I mean, I think I would add just one more word, possibly about Alex Verhaest's work, because to me, again, it's such a wonderful work that references, again, you start with this whole question of painting and technology, like in terms of a work of art. And I think that her work is the one that really kind of connects those traditions of the past, of the painting and the portraiture, to a digital form, right? Where she has these character studies, right? Which very much draw from portraiture, a tradition of portraiture, but it is transformed into a digital form, right? And the digital form breathes new life into it, because you're not capturing him necessarily only at a frozen moment, but there's somewhat of movement in them, but at the same time they're kind of frozen and captured in that iPad. So again, I think her work excavate that relationship between traditional forms and new forms of art making, but also in a way that we negotiate our life between the isolation that sometimes comes with social media, right? There's kind of the idea of technology that we're at the same time connected in new ways and feeling more lonely than ever. So I think that work bridges those kind of questions very nicely.